Proverbs 21, verse 1. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, as the rivers of water. He turneth it whithersoever he will. If you look at satellite imagery of the course of a river, and you look decade by decade, you'll notice that they don't stay in the same course. They'll shift, they'll bend, they'll meander around. Well, saying that the Lord has that same ability to direct and change the course of even the most powerful men by the world's standards. Real good example of that would be Cyrus, who was a Persian emperor, had bukus of land and peoples that he had conquered, and before he was even born, God had said there's going to be a king, his name's going to be Cyrus, and he is going to voluntarily let a slave population go free, return to their homeland, rebuild their capital city and temple, and he's going to pay for it. Right? Egypt, he brought them out by force. This one, he just says, nope, you let them go. All right? Heart of the king. Same thing with Egypt. You go back to Pharaoh, it's going the other direction, that he gave Pharaoh an abundance of courage and stubbornness beyond what a natural man would have encountered, so that the Lord could demonstrate all of his wonders and glory and trials and temptations that he was going to put Egypt through. He was not going to have them toss up the white flag and say, we surrendered too early. And so he hardened Pharaoh's heart, gave him courage, or strengthened him, made him more stubborn to continue with that process. So, modern takeaway, do you have to fear based on which human is in charge of this country or any country? Nope. Right? We still serve the one who outranks them. And should he choose, he can override their decisions, use them for his glory. He can use them for his judgment. His ways are higher than ours. I won't try to speculate on specific decisions or individuals. But I know we serve the Lord, who holds the king's heart in his hand, and he can turn it whithersoever he will, just like a river of water. Any question on 21:1? All right, Connor, why don't you read 21:2?
Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord pondereth the hearts.
Yeah. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord pondereth his heart. So when you look at your choices, the routes that you can take and the one that you prefer, you can justify it in your own sight and mind. Yeah, this is right. Not just talking about best as in what you prefer, but as in this is right. You can think that you are doing right, upstanding, justice, right, glorifying God. We can convince ourselves of that. Whereas God goes deeper, right, beyond the superficial level. He can see down into our hearts and to see where our perspective is tainted and turned, right? Our hearts are described as being deceitful, above all things, desperately wicked. Who can know it? God can know it, right? Your heart can deceive you and tell you this course of action is right, when the Lord may later convict you about it and show you plainly, no, you're wrong. Not only was it not right, it wasn't even close to right.
The word heart.
The Lord pondereth the hearts. Yeah.
So he's talking about
The hearts of,
every man.
yeah, the hearts of men.
Amen.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You don't think that the ways of every other man are right. You just think your ways are right. But he sees all the hearts, all the ways, that all knowledge. All right, this one's interesting. To do justice and judgment is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. I think about this in the context of Jesus interacting with the religious elites, right? The ones who gave all the right sacrifices, fasted all the fast, wore the right clothes, made all the outward signs of religiousness, right? Attended every service. And yet in their lives, they were neither interacting in a way with people that was just, fair course of treatment, nor were they doing judgment, right? So they were taking advantage of people. They were exercising, ways and means to accomplish their covetousness. And so he would upbraid them for saying that, yeah, you're giving sacrifices, but of the light things, right? It's like you took something out of your herb garden, a little anise, a little cumin, right? A little mint, right? And you brought a tenth of that off and said, here, Lord, I give this to you. Right? That's all of their outward religiousness. But over here in their covetousness and their lack of mercy and hard-heartedness, he says, you've left off the weightier things, the things that are substantial. And so that would be the doing justice and judgment, right? Micah 6:8, what doth the Lord require of thee but to do justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with thy God. So having fair dealings and then erring on the side of mercy as opposed to carving a path where it's always to your advantage and being hard-hearted and cruel towards others who don't meet up to whatever your standard is. So to do justice and judgment is more acceptable to the Lord. And to do justice and judgment, right, that stems from the heart, right? That's a heart outward manifestation. Whereas you could serve the Lord with sacrifices and still be very cold from it. Jesus would say that this people draws near with their lips, but their hearts are very far from me. You could have a church packed out, and if everything that we say and do here is just a performance, and there's no impact or change in our life out there, right? And we're just putting on the show, showing up with the sacrifices rather than living in a way that brings him glory and honor, doing the things that he values, treating people well, and showing mercy. All right. Verse 4. A high look and a proud heart and the plowing of the wicked is sin. What's up with that, Brother Parrish? Why would their laborers out in the field, they're pushing a plow behind an oxen or drawing it behind a big deer? What's wrong with that?
Probably because they're greedy. I mean, it's got something to do with greedy.
It has to do with who they are. They are the wicked, right? The plowing. Look at Cain and Abel. They both made a sacrifice to God. The plowing is the action, but what makes it sin is the actor. Yeah. So you have the high look. You've got your arrogancy. You've got your expression, your perspective. You've got a proud heart, right? So from your outward look, your inward heart, and everything that you do. That's what plowing kind of sums up, is all of your labors of the wicked, it's sin. Right? The New Testament describes it this way. It is impossible to please God if you don't have faith, right? Without faith, it's impossible to please God. Before we are given faith, before we are born again, we cannot please God. All that we do is sin, right? So here you've got the perspective, what do they look like, what's going on inside their heart, and then all that they accomplished. All three of those are sin. Sinner, sin.
So
the actor is the problem. Right. Yeah, the actor is the wicked, and what they do, what they think, what they show on their face, what comes out of their heart, and all that they accomplish is sin. None righteous, no, not one. That makes sense? All right. The thoughts or plans of the diligent tend only to plenteousness. Patrick, what do you think plenteousness means? That's a great synonym. Good job. So the thoughts of the diligent. Well, what's a diligent person? Person who works, right? One who is accomplishing day in, day out, doing the task to accomplish whatever they're working on. Yeah, they work. The thoughts of the diligent, the plans of the diligent tend only to plenteousness. Does that mean everything a diligent person is going to turn to gold with the Midas touch and you're going to be rich and flowing? No. But you tend to have more than you need if you're willing to work. The opposite of that is true, but everyone that is hasty only to want. All right, want there is used for lack. All right, plenteousness and lack, opposite. So one who is hasty, you ever known anybody, maybe even ourselves, where we're just trying to get through the day, we're trying to cut corners, we're doing the bare minimum, right? As opposed to the one who's consistent and steady, crossing all the T's, dotting all their I's, not skipping any rows, right? The diligent versus one that is hasty, hurrying through your work. Fun word picture here. Diligent, the Hebrew word actually has the idea of being sharp or pointed. And what's associated with that is like digging a trench. So if you're going to dig a moat around a city, does that take some diligence? Yeah. One shovel full at a time. You got to be sharp and cutting through, but consistent in labor. Verse 6, the getting of treasures by a lying tongue is a vanity, tossed to and fro of them that seek death. All right? The getting of treasures by a lying tongue. When you are trying to, scam artists, make 100,000 phone calls a day trying to convince people to give away their money by lying to them. It says that attempt to get rich, to make money that way, it's a vanity, all right? It's a worthless endeavor, and the proceeds from that are going to be tossed to and fro of them that seek death. All right, so shysters and crooks are going to be bouncing that money amongst themselves because they're going to be taking it from shysters and crooks. You ever seen a game of hot potato? Imagine that, right? If all that wealth and vanity is just bouncing around from those that are seeking death, well, what are the wages of sin? Death. And so you've got the idea there of sinners, of wickeds, of other people who are willing to deceive and to take, right? That's not a way to amass or build up a stable, long-lasting wealth. Similarly, in verse 7, the robbery of the wicked, and the robbery there, that involves violence, all right? Lying, fraud, scams. Robbery here is violent taking. The violence of the wicked shall destroy them because they refuse to do judgment. That word destroy there means drag them off. Right? Eventually, with most criminals, right, those conducts catch up with you and you get drug off. Right? The civil state, if you harm enough people and take enough stuff, they'll take enough notice of you and put some resources against you, and you tend to go to jail. The consequences will catch up because they refuse to do judgment. Right? That thing that we were talking about, doing justice and judgment, these guys are refusing to do it. Okay? The way of man is froward, weird word, means crooked, and strange. But as for the pure, his work is right. So the strange there means bearing your guilt. Right? So the way of a man, that man that we're describing there is the crooked man. Right? What is he doing? He is bearing his guilt, his wrath, his route, his path. None of it's good. For the pure, the one who's innocent, his work is right being straight.
Right
Strange means bearing guilt. So the pure and strange contrast each other, and the froward and the right contrast each other. So it's like going and getting 2x4s from Lowe's. How many of those are going to be straight? Not too many. So that's the way you're thinking about that. That path that individual has taken, the one who's bearing his guilt, is crooked as a dog's hind leg, I think is the expression. His work is right for the pure. All right, how important is having peace in your home? Well, it says, it is better to dwell in the corner of the housetop than with a brawling woman in a wide house. Right? You may be able to afford a great mansion, and if there's not peace in your home, if you're in a state of contention with your spouse and your wife is upset and just brawling, right? That idea of being full of strife. It says it's actually more preferable, it's better to go up on the roof and just kind of lean against the chimney. Right? There's no cover over your head. Better to get rained on and wet and cold than to have that level of strife in your home. Now, this doesn't give you much indication on how to deal with that. One thing is choose wisely, right, on the front end. The other is recognizing that if it's better to live on the corner of a rooftop, that's a serious thing, and that care, particularly as husbands, we should be given to nurturing and teaching and encouraging our wives, loving them as Christ loved the church, so that they are not in that position. Right? I'm speaking mostly to my boys right now. Yeah, I know Patrick's like, I'm 8, I don't have a wife. I know. One day, be prepared.
Talks about why sometimes that may, to me, indicate that the reason you have a brawling wife is because you're never there and you put other things in front of her. Maybe you spent too much time amassing stuff.
That's possible. We don't have much indication on why they have a wide house, but as far as you're trying to put in perspective, would I rather have a mansion and an upset wife, or would I rather have, just a corner, camping outside, so I'm not laying in the mud, but that's about the only feature. And it's saying, well, this one's better. Then you put in perspective how detrimental it is to. Enough money doesn't make marital stuff go away or feel better. Right? That's probably another way to put it. The soul of the wicked desireth evil. His neighbor findeth no favor in his eyes. All right, so an individual, the wicked, right, the actor there, desires, lust after, covets evil, right? Plans and schemes, wickedness. How can I get ahead, get my stuff, get whatever? It says even his neighbor doesn't find grace, right? Why do con men sometimes take advantage of their people in their own families and networks, and right? Why? Because that's what they're pursuing, right? It says that even if you're a neighbor, you're not going to be somehow excluded from his target list. Findeth no favor. Favor could also be described as grace. 11. When the scorner is punished, the simple is made wise. All right, so the scorner here, one who's mocking, popping off, talking back, right? I think we've used the illustration before of if you're in traffic court and somebody gets up and starts barking at the judge and mouthing off, and judge slams down the gavel and says, put him in jail for 30 days. How do you think everyone else in that courtroom is going to treat the judge? Very politely. Yes, judge. No, judge. So the simple, the naive, can be made wise by someone else enduring punishment. However, when the wise is instructed, he receiveth the knowledge. So In one scenario, it's the people around who are straightening up for a minute so they don't receive whatever that punishment is. But a wise man, when he receives correction, that can be included told him, you've done wrong. This course of action is wrong, rather than bowing up and, getting defensive about it. You learn and you take that knowledge with you. That's what the wise man does, is be able to receive instruction or correction and then gain knowledge. Is it hard being told you're wrong? Yeah. How many of us enjoy that? No. It doesn't say that they enjoy it, but it says the takeaway is that they do take away information from it. Verse 12. The righteous man wisely considereth the house of the wicked, but God overthroweth the wicked for their wickedness. All right? You as a righteous individual, it's not your job to overthrow the house of the wicked. Not your job. But using your wisdom and discernment, you need to identify it and mark it. Right? That's not some place you need to go and hang out, not some place you need to associate with, not something you need to build your life upon. Be concerned, be danger, right? The wicked man doesn't show favor to even his neighbor, so why would you want to hang out there? So you'd wisely consider it. The end result, God will take care of it. God will overthrow the wicked for their wickedness. Questions? 13. Whoso stoppeth his ears at the cry of the poor, he shall also cry himself, and shall not be heard. The poor there has the idea of the thin, right? They're crying out because they're hungry. And you are ignoring the need of another individual, right? And I said need, right? Jesus, when he was using the illustration of when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink, right? This is talking about making sure people aren't hungry and thirsty. This doesn't mean that you're filling up their cigarettes or their drugs or recharging their phones or whatever else, right? The other superfluous things that we can convince ourselves are necessities now. Making sure people are not hungry if we're asked. Whoso stoppeth his ears at the cry of the poor, he also shall cry himself and shall not be heard. Right? This is kind of that reaping what you sow. The Lord could take away all that you have so that you're in the same position crying out in hunger, and you can bet that he would allow you to experience that same ignoring, where people pretend like they don't hear your cries.
I always like to be poor.
There you go.
Someday I may be poor.
I think that's a reasonable practice. And again, that goes back to doing justice and judgments more acceptable. Right? That idea of this is mercy in practice. Right? What is pure religion? To visit the widows and orphans in their affliction. All right. To visit doesn't mean we go sit down and just, say hi at their house. Right. They may not have a house. It means to go where they're at and provide for those basic needs, making sure that they have food. Right. The widows in Acts chapter 6, why did deacons get, ordained as deacons? Was to pass out bread on a daily basis so widows didn't starve to death. That's showing mercy. That's making sure folks are taken care of. That's more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. Verse 14, a gift in secret pacifieth anger, and a reward in the bosom strong wrath. All right, so this is probably not the negative connotation of a gift of a bribe. This is probably more like you've genuinely done someone wrong, and they're angry, they're full of wrath, and rather than making a big show where you're trying to manipulate them into, well, you can't be mad at me because I've done this, and now everyone knows of giving this gift, it's given in secret, and you allow them to only be the ones to know what you've done, right? And it says that the reaction from that is it tends to pacify anger. Tends to put away strong wrath. And a brother offended is harder to be won than a city. But here is one manner that you can approach that with. A reward in the bosom, that means one that's secretly held. Verse 15. It is joy to the just to do judgment, but destruction shall be to the workers of iniquity. We talked this morning, mentioned the fruit of the Spirit. Right? As you're yielding yourself to righteousness, there's fruit that will be produced by the Spirit. Included in that is joy. Well, here is the Old Testament correlation with that. As you are doing justice, doing what's right, it's a joy to you, to the just. But to a worker of iniquity, destruction shall be to them. And going back, it's kind of hearkening to verse 3 again. To do justice and judgment is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. Questions? Okay. The man that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead. If you get off the marked minefield, right? You get minesweepers who go through minefields, say, all right, here's the safe path. If you get off that path, where are you more likely to remain as you wander away? In that spot where you lay, because you've got blown up, right? Leaving the path of wisdom and understanding, there's many times there's real life consequences that could result all the way up to the termination of your life. Funny story about the Lord of the Rings. I saw a little clip where one of the scenes that they're filming, it was actually on a portion where there were some unexploded ordnances, and the army guys in New Zealand were like, now if you see anything that looks like this, don't touch it. It's a bomb. And they saw some of them. And they taped off some things. They said, are we safe in the tape? They're like, well, you're less likely to encounter them in the tape. So added a little tension to the moment. Here's your free movie trivia. All right. So the man that wandereth out of the way of understanding, so the path of understanding, he wanders off of it, shall remain in the congregation of the dead. Right? Foolish choices can lead to death. 17. He that loveth pleasure shall be a poor man. He that loveth wine and oil shall not be rich. All right, so pleasure seeking, entertainment driven. If you love fishing so much that you've got to have the best bass boat, and you got to have this, and you got to have that, and you got to go on these charter tours, and you got to, and that's your life, right? Where will all your resources go? Into pursuing that hobby, right? And that's true of any hobby, right? There's folks who soup up off-road toys, and they go splash in the mud, right? Or fly airplanes, or model rockets, whatever it is, the loving of pleasure. That's that entertainment-driven mindset. If you love that, that's where all your resources will go. Right? By the same token, we have kind of a whole industry that's promoted at having the best food, the best wine, the foodie, right? The most unique experiences, and no one's ever had this, and right? He that loves wine and oil shall not be rich, right? The overindulgence in entertainment, the overindulgence in food and wine and pursuit of natural pleasures, you can drain your resources in that overindulgence. Does that mean you can't go fishing? Not saying that. Does that mean you can't take a vacation out? Not saying that. Does that mean you can't take your wife out to dinner? Not saying that. But when that becomes your love and the pursuit of, I got to have the better, got to have the better, got to have the best, got to be better than them, oh, they've got this, right? Then you're overemphasizing something that's not that important. Right? This one's a strange one. Verse 18, the wicked shall be a ransom for the righteous, and the transgressor for the upright. Right? So here you've got a picture there for, a prisoner exchange. It's like the Lord has this group of the righteous over here that have been taken prisoner for some reason, and they're going to have a prisoner exchange, and the ones that get taken captive are going to be the wicked, and the other ones are going to be set free. What would be an example of that happening? How about Haman? Remember Haman? Esther, and Esther's was a cousin, Mordecai, right? Mordecai had his death arranged for him by Haman. Haman had some big old fancy gallows built in the backyard, right by his wife's swing. I mean, it's probably and Mordecai was going to die there, and yet the Lord exchanged Haman for Mordecai. Mordecai got to live, and Haman and his sons all died on those same gallows. Right? The Lord has that ability. Verse 19, a companion of verse 9, it is better to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and angry woman. Right? You want to talk about the value of a godly bride? When it talks about rubies, this is the flip side, right? Making a poor choice where you have one who does not have the same values, and serving God is not high on her priority list, if at all. Contention, strife, angry, bitter, frustrated, that's a terrible spot to be in. It says you might as well go out and camp in the wilderness. It would be preferable. That's not saying to abandon your wife, but as far as the difficulty of living in that home full of strife is real. There is treasure to be desired and oil in the dwelling of the wise, but a foolish man spendeth it up. All right, so savings. The wise don't use every resource they've got. All right, treasure to be desired and oil. You've got a little bit more resources and food, right? That's what the oil is kind of representing there. Above what you need for that week, right? You have additional resources. The foolish guy just lives hand to mouth and just burns through it all without regard, right? If you meet somebody and they have a need and you haven't amassed anything, how can you help, right? The goal isn't just amassing your wealth and fortune so I can have this great name and look impressive to the Joneses, but the more that you have in reserve, right, you're living on less than you use, then as there's opportunities to help and do good, which is glorifying the Lord, you'll be in a position to do it. Right? So should we spend all that we make? No. Verse 21. He that followeth after righteousness and mercy findeth life, righteousness, and honor. All right, you're following after righteousness. That sounds a lot like we talked about this morning, right? You're yielding yourself unto righteousness. You're seeking to serve God in the way that He's indicated, including by showing mercies to others. The only person who's going to do that is one who the Lord's heart has changed, right? Indicating they're already His, and Christ has died for them. The end result, what will they find? They'll find life, eternal life. They'll find perfect righteousness, and they'll find honor, right? They'll find glorification. That's the companion to that again is over in Romans 2:7. Romans 2:7. To them who by patient continuance in well-doing seek for glory and honor and immortality, right? God's rendering to every man according to his deeds. He renders eternal life. But to them that are contentious and do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness, indignation and wrath, tribulation, verse 10. But glory and honor and peace to every man that worketh good, to the Jew first and also to the Gentile. So you have a description here of the Christian life, of the Christian witness, of what are you seeking and what's the end result. (22) A wise man scaleth the city of the mighty, and casteth down the strength of the confidence thereof. What's it mean to scale a city wall? Climb it, yeah. To gain entry over it, right? The city of the mighty, what were the Israelites so afraid about when they didn't go into the land? Right? I mean, the people were tall, but their cities, they're like walled up to heaven, right? This is a really big task. So the cities of the mighty, the impressive walls, well, a wise man scales them and casteth down the strength of their confidence. Well, what had been so impressive before, these mighty walls, is when they're tossed down, they're not so impressive, right? You'd put your confidence, we're going to be okay because we got the best walls, the best tower, the best archers. Those are strong people. Yet a wise man is able to scale them and cast them down. This has a companion text in Ecclesiastes 9:16, where wisdom is better than strength. Let's see if I can find that real quick. Ecclesiastes 9:16. Yeah, then said I, wisdom is better than strength. And the context of that was a poor man versus a rich man delivering the city. There was a poor wise man, by his wisdom, delivered the city, yet no man remembered the same poor man. So a wise man is able to cast down the city. (23) Whoso keepeth his mouth, keep means to guard. Whoso guards his mouth and his tongue, keepeth his soul from troubles. We're not talking about your immoral soul. We're talking about your life. All right? You want to guard your life, protect your life. Secret Service, protecting, a notable party. Start by guarding your mouth. Here's your first one. Be careful about what comes out of it. Seems pretty simple and straightforward, but boy howdy in practice. Right, Elizabeth? Yeah. Oh. Proud and haughty scorner is his name, who dealeth in proud wrath. One who deals in proud wrath. Arrogant outburst of passion and indignation. I don't care who you are. That's not demonstrating the Christ-like witness. All right? The label that Scripture gives that individual who's an outburst of passion and arrogance, right, is that you are a proud, haughty scorner. Jesus is described as being meek, right? Humble, quiet. We should be, large portions of Proverbs about controlling our tongues. Well, I can't help it. Can you? The whole message this morning is about, are you a servant to sin now? No. And so there is a door of escape. Right? Proud and haughty scorner is his name, who dealeth in proud wrath. Oh, the desire of the slothful killeth him, for his hands refuse to labor. What in the world does that mean, Patrick? Well, the lazy people don't want to work. Yeah, slothful man is someone who's lazy. But it's his desire, right? And I don't think we're talking about literal to death. Maybe. But you will find that lazy people tend to have really big dreams. All right, it's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. I want this so bad I can taste it. but because they don't put any of the work in to reach any of the milestones necessary to reach any of the beginning goals, much less the big goal, their dream can drive them crazy. In this case, it's using the expression of killing them. You've got a big desire, but no follow-through. And you'll tend to find a lot of excuses at that point, and blame for the world or environments or situations or luck. Right? Why does all the worst luck fall on Donald Duck? Right? He never controls his mouth, right? So the desire of the slothful killeth him. For why? His hands refuse to labor. Right? The things that we desire to accomplish, they all take work. Sometimes they take skills, sometimes they take training to get the skills, and then getting the experience. Right? There's steps and time. You got to put in both. He coveteth greedily all the day long, but the righteous giveth and spareth not. I don't know if that he is the same slothful from the previous verse. You at least have an individual who's covetousness, he's coveting, all the day long, right? So you have opportunities to do good, chances where people need help, need mercy, and you, for the love of your stuff, refuse to part with it. That's one guy. The contrast is the righteous individual. He giveth, and he spareth not. Right? Giving often has a self-sacrificial component to it. It's good to do. This was kind of a heart check thing of where are we in our attitudes? Are we willing to give and not ignore needs, or are we so wrapped up in having a certain thing or amount of stuff or whatever that we are being covetous, right? The tools, the resources that we have are tools in whose hands? They're either tools for unrighteousness unto sin or righteousness unto God. Verse 27. The sacrifice of the wicked is abomination. How much more when he bringeth it with a wicked mind? Cain and Abel, right? They both offered sacrifices. One man was righteous, the other was wicked. And so it says even the sacrifice itself that Cain offered was an abomination. It was disgusting. All right, it's like you took roadkill and offered it to the Lord. All right, in comparison, that's gross as well. There's a lot of things that are described as abomination that are just offensive to God, and so here you've got even their offerings to Him from the wicked are an abomination. Well, it says, well, take it to the next level. How much more disgusting or abomination when He bringeth it with a wicked mind, where this hypocritical pretense, I'm doing this for show. And you can think about the Pharisees, the ones who were outwardly good, righteous, right, on the outward show, but on the inside they were described as being full of all wickedness and covetousness and dead men's bones. The double-minded man, right, saying one thing and thinking something very different. A false witness shall perish, but a man that heareth speaketh constantly. So you've got the faithful witness and the unfaithful witness, right? If you were called to testify in a scene, the consequence for lying, right, is you can expect that person to perish, to be destroyed. Right? They're sinning. They're lying lips, and bearing false witness against somebody. Those are one of those things that God describes as an abomination, disgusting. But he that heareth speaketh constantly or consistently. Right? You're speaking what you actually heard or saw. Right? You're a man walking in your integrity. A wicked man hardeneth his face, but as for the upright, he directeth his way. He directeth his way. Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? It's hard for thee to kick against the pricks, right? When you have an animal goad where you're trying to direct him where to go, and rather than heeding the direction, they just start kicking against it, and it hurts, but they continue to do the wrong thing. That's your idea there with the wicked man. He's going to harden his face. He's going to get more stubborn so he can keep doing the wrong thing. But as for the upright, I think the he there is God. God is directing his way. He's prodding him rather. And Israel, how often they be described as you stubborn, rebellious, and stiff-necked people, right? You're not yielding to the promptings of the Lord to do the right thing. Whereas the upright, this doesn't mean you're going to find that path and perfectly walk down it without any deviation the rest of your life, but when you get off base and the Lord pokes you back, right, you go back. Rather than saying, leave me alone, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, I'm in charge here. Is that a healthy plan towards God? No, not at all. There is no wisdom, nor understanding, nor counsel against the Lord. Right? What committee, what treaty of the world, what organization could possibly, in all their collective wisdom, might, strength, defeat any purpose of God? None. Right? There's no wisdom, no understanding, nor counsel against the Lord. Right? What does Psalms 2 talk about? Right? All the kings. Yeah. If they wanted to take their best efforts and go against the Lord, they lose. It's Psalm 2. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers to take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away his cords from us. God's response is, oh, I'm worried. They're going to do something. Oh my, they're going to defeat me. He that sitteth in heaven shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision. Right? Now, fools, you can't overthrow him. We know who wins. God, that's right. Good job, David. Verse 31, the horse is prepared against the day of battle, but safety is of the Lord. Right? You do what you can. Right? If you're going to go out into battle, you take care of your horse. You feed him, you brush him, you get all his gear on, you make sure he's shod and he's ready to go. He's prepared for that battle. But your preparations there are not going to be the deciding force of whether you come out of that battle. Right? The safety is of the Lord. Right? He's going to care for you through it. He gets the credit. So you do what's within your control, but trust him within the results. Proverbs 21.